Hello, my name is Matthew Macaluso, and welcome to my talk, Pumped Up for Plants, the effects of dissolved nutrients on tender green mustard spinach, brassica rapa, and aeroponic system. So to start things off, I would like to thank Mr. Dutton, Mr. Spence, Mr. Mitchell, and my mother for these people helped make this project possible. So during the summer of 2016, I was in the grocery store with my mother, and in the produce section was being listed in Food Lion, and that is when I began wondering myself about how plants and agriculture worked, how the whole system worked. And specifically, I wanted to know about how nutrients and fertilizer affected plants. It's a nice buzzword to throw around, nutrients, but I wanted to know more about these essential compounds and elements, and specifically how they affected plants. I just wanted to learn more about them. So to understand nutrients more and how they affected plants, I decided to study their effects in a different environment. I selected to use the method hydroponics. Hydroponics is simply soilless agriculture, and instead of using soil to nestle your plants in, you just use a concentrated nutrient solution. For the soil is just there to hold the plant. The nutrients are there for the plant to grow, and that's all the plant technically needs. So I actually did a subgroup of hydroponics called aeroponics. And aeroponics is a soilless plant culture system in which nutrient solutions are intermittently or continuously misted onto plant roots. This basically means instead of having your roots rooted inside the water or the nutrient solution, you now have the roots hanging freely in the air for more oxygen, and the water is sprayed upwards. So also, an interesting side note, when you use aeroponics, the nutrients in water is recycled. No soil is needed, such as in normal agriculture. And I just find this to be more environmentally helpful. So I tested a species of brassica called tender green mustard spinach. And brassicas are just a genus of the plants in the mustard family, such as your cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, we all love those, right? Cabbages and mustards and lettuce. So tender green mustard spinach, what is it? It's a variant of Brassica rapa, and these plants actually come from Japan, and in Asia they are eaten as a staple vegetable. And these was created for the southern United States of America, because during the summer it was very warm in Virginia, and this seemed like a good idea. So nutrients is a substance that provides nourishment for growth or metabolism. These are mainly inorganic compounds, and they're found in the soil, and that's the only reason why plants grow in the soil. Take away the soil, and all you have nutrients, and that's all you need. So you have your primary macronutrients such as nitrates and phosphates, and then you also have your secondary macronutrients, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. You also have micro secondary nutrients, which is basically things that you only find in trace amounts in the soil, such as maybe argon or molybdenum. So my first independent variable was the concentration of nutrients. My second independent variable was the location on the bucket. And my third independent variable was the number of plants per net pot. So my dependent variable I measured was the dry vegetative mass. So this is basically if you have your plant and you snipped it off where the green ends. So this is basically everything besides the root structure. That is the dry vegetative mass, only the vegetable part. So nutrients directly affect metabolism and growth, as already said. And they are key components in protein synthesis, ATP production, glucose production, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, asexual production. They are essential for life. And plants find these mainly in the soil. And location affected the water coverage, the nutrient water coverage. So basically there was a top and a side of the bucket, and you would have slightly different water coverage based on that location. And the different number of plants when seeded create a realistic simulation of how you would seed something in the agriculture field in mass production. And that is why there is different number of seedlings per net pot. So these are my hypotheses. So the first set of hypotheses deals directly with how dry mass would be affected by the level of concentrated nutrients. The first one states that the concentration of nutrients will not affect the dry mass at all. The alternative hypothesis states that as nutrient concentration increases, dry mass increases. For my second set of hypotheses, I stated that For the null hypothesis, the top and the side will have an equal dry mass. There will not be a significant change effect. And for my alternative hypothesis, the dry mass would be higher in the top compared to the side. For my third hypothesis, the null hypothesis states that the number of plants will not affect the dry mass. And for my alternative hypothesis, the dry mass will increase as the number of plants per net pot decreases. So because this is aeroponics, I had to construct my very own aeroponic container. And you see here, this is the apparatus I used. There is this is a bucket. This is a bucket you can buy at Home Depot. And the side has some PVC pipes sticking out with some net pots inside. And the top also has net pots with sitting inside holes. And this simply means now I can have 10 net pots per bucket. So and in the bottom there's a water pump to spray out the nutrient solution from the bottom. To change the concentration of nutrients I used, I would take water, and I would have a set ratio I used for 10 grams for every 5 gallons. And I would either add or take away water to dilute the concentration or increase the concentration of nutrients. And so the very first week, I took a roll of nutrient wool, which is basically a fiberglass-like material for plants, full of nutrients. And I put these little seeds inside, and the brown stuff on top is not soil; it is called coir, and it is a ground up coconut mix. And this is to get my plant started, because before I can put them in the bucket, they must have at least roots. They have to have something to survive inside the bucket. So after 1 week, this is what they look like after 1 week. I would transfer these plants. I would cut them up, these little squares, and put them inside net pots. And so for 4 weeks, I had these buckets of plants growing. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buckets for my 5 different levels, and I would monitor that every Tuesday and Thursday. I would come in to check on them to make sure everything was fine. I cleaned them, I watered them, made sure there's enough water inside. Every week I would change out the water to make sure for every single bucket to make sure everything was stable. And the picture you're looking at is level 4, and you can see how well the plants grew inside my tailored nutrient solution and my specific aeroponic buckets. So after that was all over, after 4 weeks, in November, at the end of October, beginning of November, I dehydrated my vegetative mass, and I measured them, and this is what I found. So this is a graph. So on this graph, on the x-axis is the nutrient concentration in grams per liter. So, and going left to right is levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I have to change that. The y-axis is measured in mass in grams. And I found a trend line of y equals 891.83 x minus 0.7215. And this is basically stating for every gram of nutrients inside the water per liter, the mass would increase by 891.83. But because the grams per liter is only is about times 10 to the negative 5, you're actually looking at about 0.00891 grams increase per every unit level. Oh, crap. Anyway, so I ran it in ANCOVA on this data and got a p-value of 0.0266, which is a significant effect. So this is another graph of my second set of IVs. So the x-axis is location on the bucket, 1 being side, 2 being top. The y-axis again is grams. There is a 0.0681 difference between side and top. So there's a 0.0681 gram increase. I ran it in ANCOVA, and I found a p-value of 0.6071. So because this relationship is linear, I decided to use it in ANCOVA, and because I am selecting a continuous and categorical set of IVs being met and measuring a continuous DV, I ran it in ANCOVA. This is a graph with the x-axis being the number of plants and the y-axis being the mass of the measured in grams. And the trend is from 1 to 15 different number of plants. The overall trend is a decrease in mass with the increase in plants. And there is a negative 0.0467 decrease for every increase in number of plants per net pot. I ran an ANCOVA on this data and I found a p-value of 0.0734. So what I found was that I reject the null hypothesis for my first set of IVs. So this means that the nutrients has a significant effect on the dry mass. For my second, it was found that I failed to reject the null hypothesis. The dry mass the top and the side did not have a significant effect on the dry mass. The location did not. And for my third, I found that with the ANCOVA with a p-value of 0.07, this did not reach the alpha of 0.05, and therefore I reject the null hypothesis, and therefore the number of plants does not significantly affect the dry mass. So what I found with this project was that nutrients do indeed play a vital role to metabolism and growth. Whoa. Sorry, Mr. Dutton. So the plants were not affected significantly from water cover, sunlight, or gravity. Oh, I gotta change that. And that, I swear to God, I fixed this. Anyway, competition was an unseen factor. But in the real field, in agriculture, you will never seed everything one seed per hole. And therefore, when you mass produce things and when everything is seeded, you will have different number of plants. And this adds a new level of realism to my project. So this study helped prove the validity of the aeroponic method. This is a relatively new method. So early 20th century, this was starting to be used. Hydroponics was starting to be used with tomatoes and lettuce, and aeroponics is a slightly more advanced form. And quite simply, this is not used across all the United States. And this study helps prove that this is indeed a viable method to growing plants, or at least brassicas. And so aeroponics helps recycle water and nutrients, so you have no need for fertilizers or reusing them, so you have less runoff. It's also cheaper, as long as your plants have the nutrients it needs. And since there's no soil, there's less erosion. So you have no soil erosion, and therefore you can possibly have better water quality. And so there's also less excessive eutrophication from the less runoff. It is more efficient. There's less land use, so we can have a more rich environment for wild animals and plants. So even though this method was expensive, I had to pay about $500 to buy all the pumps and all the plastic I had to use to make this. You can reuse your equipment once you buy it, so there's a high startup cost. But because there is environmental protection and production implications, which are excellent, it proves that in the long run it is more efficient, and I believe that we should implement this practice more. So for you guys who are farmers or gardeners out there, so increased nutrient concentration does significantly affect your produce grains. This could assist in agricultural big business or people like me who tend to garden. So with more mass, we can feed more people and at a lower cost to farmers and to the environment. So this data suggests that brassicas can handle a higher concentration of nutrients, and developing a data bank for people to understand how much nutrients their plants can take will assist the entire population. So what I saw in my graph, flip back to that graph anyway, Matt. This is basically proves this graph in the lower corner here. So basically the deficient zone was levels 1, 2, and 3. The adequate zone was around level 4, and if the level 5 was starting to show the toxic zone. So if I believe I added a more wide range of level of concentrated nutrients, change it up a little bit, I believe we can see this perfect curve. And this proves the fact that nutrients have a significant effect on plants and how much directly affects their growth. Thank you.